I'm an architectural student, and sorry for my English, it's not so good. And my question is, when I don't learn things like this in the university, where can I learn it? And so, as a student, I don't have the money for, I don't know the word in English, Fortbildung. And so, where can I go here in Berlin? Because I can travel to America, I can travel to Netherlands. Where can I learn things like that for my future?
It's quite simple. Is that piece on? Can you hear me? It's quite simple. You have to focus on the education. That means don't focus on places. Um, it is quite difficult in the moment to get a place or to find a place in Germany. There are some. There's if you come later to me, I don't want to do advertisement now for schools. There are, let's say, in Germany, 3 places where you can really learn that. There are places where you can get it for free. There are places where you can get as a kind of exchange student. Worldwide, there are enough possibilities, but you have to be flexible. That's the only thing in the moment you have to be. You have to be flexible. You have to move. And that is one nice thing. So you learn languages. I'm now able to speak Dutch, English, and German. Your English will be much better when you go to a country which is English speaking. I don't know. It's just, see, my English is not perfect as well, but we can talk with each other, and this is so important. Just go, and if you don't find it in Berlin, don't clamp on Berlin. Berlin is a nice place for certain things, but if you want to have a specific knowledge, go where the knowledge is and not where the money is. Go where your interest is. Follow your interest and heart, and don't stay just of, oh, my parents are here and my dog lives here, and
When I began the process to embrace BIM, there was really nothing and nobody out there. Uh, One thing I've learned from that process is that the schools cannot keep up with how fast technology is shifting and changing, and it's not slowing down. The good thing that we have now, there's a little bit of a vision of free knowledge as an idea. And there's this thing out there, no plugin for Google, but you can, if you were to go to YouTube, for example, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of videos that people are volunteering, that they're just putting out for free into the community that you could essentially self-educate. I think it's extraordinarily important to, um, to become a self-learner to survive in BIM, mostly because the technology is constantly changing. So you're never going to reach that pinnacle, right? You're always going to be a student, and you're also going to be a teacher to others. So the best recommendation I can give you is find the technologies that you're interested in and search on the internet for any resources that you can get and start learning, right? That's my recommendation.
So I have a yeah, no, it's a fine thing. So I have a question to you, Hector. When you talk to Arquitectonica and when they decided to go into BIM with such an enormously big project, what was what were the first steps they were? Do you know what their first steps were when they decided to do that? Because I guess they had to get the people trained very, very quickly to be able to use that. They had no time to, yeah, to study that.
Right. Well, they picked the technology. At this point, it was mostly because of a requirement from the owner. They specifically chose to do Revit because it was generally accessible in the marketplace. And then when they embraced the technology and they picked the platform of choice that they wanted to use, they brought in the technology partner that came in-house, and throughout the entire design and construction process, they maintained a close relationship with the vendor to make sure that they had continuous in-house training in the technology. These kinds of things are steps I think sometimes firms cut out of the mix. They hope that they don't have to spend too much money on this. They hope that they don't have to invest too much money in education and training and bringing in teachers and consultants and these sort of things. But that was not the approach that Arquitectonica took. They embraced consultants. They brought in in-house experts. And when the technology didn't do what the vendor promised, they fought back and said, "Go back and fix it. This doesn't work." So they maintained a very deep relationship with the vendor during their process. Otherwise, it would have fallen flat on their face. You can fail at BIM. As you were saying, it's okay, but it can happen. So you need to make sure that you have the support that you need to get you from point A to point B, and that's what Arquitectonica did.
One, two.
Thank you thank you very much. I like in your presentation, I think the last picture where you have this workshop between, I think, more than just architects, right? And today, I mean, we all know in any project, especially on large projects, how big the team is, composed of architects, civil engineers, mechanical, cost consultants, feasibility people. And we, for a period of 3 years, you live with these people, you shout in one room, you kill each other almost, but it's amazing that all these people, before they went into the practice, one was studying in School of Architecture, one was studying in School of Civil Engineering, one was studying in School of Business, but nobody was studying in School of Building. So you spoke about BIM knowledge and communication. BIM knowledge, we can maybe get it, but where do you learn communication?
What I always do is I buy 6 packs of Lego, go to the offices, and they are really nice team building tasks in stapling Legos. If you're interested, I can send you some links. You learn fantastically what communication in teams is when you are not allowed to speak but to do. This is what I always do then. I place them in front of Legos, they are shocked. I tell them, so now you get exercises, everyone gets a secret exercise, how to build, and then they start. And they have to communicate with hands and feet, but not voice. In the end, they know how to communicate. And this is exactly what we have to learn as architects. Sometimes you have to guess, sometimes you have to listen. The most important thing is, what is your opponent doing? What is he trying to tell you? Listen. It's not communication. Half of communication is listening, processing, evaluating, and then you learn it. It's a human thing. It's not a thing. Communication, kids can do that. I have 2 boys. They can communicate fantastically. Sometimes they fight, but they don't kill each other. And in the end, they find a solution.
I can contribute to that a little bit as well. I always find it funny. I'm also an educator. I've been teaching BIM in maybe every institution of education at every level of education in South Florida. I have sort of an inside joke. Studying architecture is like going to an all-boys school, right? You spend all these years, you hang around with a bunch of guys, you hear about these things called women out there, right? And then you graduate from school, and all of a sudden now you need to meet your partner. You don't know how to dance. You've never talked to a woman before. You don't know anything about them. You maybe never will, right? But there's this expectation, and the silo problem that we have in architecture starts in school. Students that go, in the United States, you can go to school for 7 years. You will never sit in class with a structural engineer. You will never sit in class with a mechanical engineer. You will not know these people. You will never sit in class with somebody who's going to build the building. Yet, there's an expectation that as soon as you get out of school, all of a sudden there's all these people you've never interfaced with that have to come together to build this building. So all of a sudden, BIM just exacerbates this problem, right? Because BIM requires you to work in an integrated way with other people, so we have a very serious social problem of people who are not familiar with talking to other professionals. Some of those professionals could be people in the financial market talking about return on investments and cost data and cost models, and you're an architect and you don't have any idea what CapEx is, right? And so it really, you think you mentioned it, Boris, you really need to embrace your other partners in the equation and understand how your work interfaces with the other person. What is that handshake between you and the structural engineer? What is that handshake between the architect and the interior designer? Because you are now co-authoring a model together. So those handshakes, those exchanges, that respect that has to come in when you're dealing with other professionals of knowledge is very critical. I think if we take a humble approach and we realize that we don't know everything, right? And that every player in the equation adds value, you need to learn from those people. You need to learn what they need from you, and you're going to share that in a model. And I think that those are some of the challenges that we're facing. But not only is it just happening in general, now we're going cross boundaries across the world where you might have 5 different spoken languages on a project, and you still need to communicate with these people, right? So there's a very, in the very near future, we're going to see a very weird situation where 50% of your projects may be outside, in this case, outside of Germany. China has 50% of the world's building economy right now. If you don't have a project in China, you're missing 50% of the pie. I don't speak Chinese. So it's an important topic, and I think that what you're going to see in BIM is this need of global collaboration and communication, and is at the heart of this discussion.
Experience is women are far better in organizing these processes. It is unbelievable. Every good project in the moment I know, there is a woman involved. So that's your chance, girls. And I really mean that. You are far better with making things possible where guys would kill each other.
Well, I'm an architect, and I have a firm. We have a developing firm, and so we start from this conceptual design to all the way to construction, and I think one of the things that helps me greatly is the multitasking that we have to do. You have to think of everything at the same time. I mean, we have many kids, and we are working, and then we have to think of the schools of the kids, for us, the work, the project, and talking to the finance institutions, the end user, the virtual communication, everything at the same time. And I do think I agree with Boris. From the very beginning, I thought, what tool can I do so everybody is connected at the same time every day? And I ran into Revit. And I started, it's expensive, but there's a lot of information that comes with the package, and they will give you hours, and they will give you explanations. And I said, I don't care, I'm not a perfectionist in this regard. I just start. It doesn't matter if it's not perfect at the beginning. And we finished one project with Revit. Many engineers in Miami were not willing to work with us. They didn't know. They just. So I think the beginning is also willingness. Willingness to embrace it, to not care, to experiment, and to involve everybody out of need, really. And thank you for saying that about women, but it's about multitasking and also not being afraid of not doing it perfect the first time. I think that's. So I don't know if it comes out better if you don't use that if you don't use it.
Gabriela brings up a good point. I think the desire to want to do BIM is critical, and this came up at the Arquitectónica discussion. The worst thing that happens is when somebody has no desire to do BIM, and now they are pushing it down your throat. This is the war situation. I don't recommend this approach. If you have an architectural office or you're a member of an architectural team or a design team, find the people within your office that want to embrace BIM and let them flourish. And by example, let them inspire the others to embrace and experience BIM. But if you take a sort of a dictatorship role and you just try to ram it down everyone's throat at the office, you might have the wrong team at the office. And unfortunately, that might be a reality that we may need to face. Question in the back?
Yeah, I have a quick question. Sometimes I don't understand the role of the architect because I'm an architect and I studied architecture and I worked in a BIM project and now I'm a master's student in architecture and I'm doing an internship in a British firm. I'm working in Berlin office, so we are following the British standards. And I really don't know the role of the coordination of the architects because when I worked on another BIM project, we were the architects, we were the consultant, we are the people who were coordinating. Now here in Berlin, and we are following the British system, we are not, the architects, they do not coordinate because I'm working in an engineering office now, not an architectural office, so I'm more exposed to the structural and the other services or the building services apart from the architecture. And what I see now is that the engineers, they are the consultants, they are the people who coordinate. And the architects who are the people who change the design and who are the people who demand and say, we need that, we don't need that. And the other engineers who are the people who have to follow. And then when I searched for that, I just realized that it's different from a country to another and from a system to another system. So that's the thing that I don't understand. Is there a system for the role of the architects and the role of BIM?
Yes.
Who is an architect in the BIM? Is he the consultant or he's the designer or who is he?
This is a great question, and on top of everything, this question is in flux right now. I'm very happy to answer this question, and I'm going to answer it a couple of different ways. One, the architect has always answered the question of why. Why is it that way? Why do we build? Why does it have to be this way? Why does it have to be oriented on the site? Why is the entrance of the building in this location and not in some other location? The architect answers the question of why. Everyone else that comes into the equation, the engineers, are there to answer the how question. They can't answer the why question. The architect answers the why question. But if the architect says, this is the reason why we need to do X, then the engineers will say, well, I don't know why we're doing this, but if this is what you want to do, this is how we can get that accomplished. And the contractor, he doesn't understand how or why. He just says, okay, you guys, if this is what you want to do and that's how you want to do it, then this is the way we're going to build it. So there's that piece of it. But I think with regards to BIM, the role of the architect is also changing. And I'm really excited about this because the role of the architect is becoming the role of the building information manager almost. The architect is becoming an architect of relationships. As the building systems and BIM becomes really smarter, the architect is designing how the different components behave because the BIM models are smart and they're parametric. So the architect is now becoming an architect of relationships. A lot of the knowledge of how a building comes together and the data that's in the building, it's starting to live inside the model. So the architect is embedding this information into the model, but he is managing all the definitions and the relationships of how a door sits in the wall and why is it there. I want to answer, sometimes when we talk about BIM, a lot of people are afraid that BIM is going to kill innovation because it's very easy to go to a library, grab a door, and throw it into a building and say, look, I'm finished. Okay? And this is not the role of the architect. The role of the architect is to continuously ask the question, what is the nature and the relationship of a door? Is it something that has a knob and two hinges? Is it just an opening in a wall? Is it a curtain of water that falls that when you get close to it, the water stops and allows you to pass? The architect could never, ever, ever stop asking the question of why, right?
It's just important that you learn which questions to ask. The questions you have to ask in a process is are different. So you have to learn as architect again, what does it mean to be part of a process? What questions? And that is what I think I show that in the slides. The roles, they have similar tasks within, but the organization of the task and what the others are doing is somehow in congruency with that. So you have to talk to each other. You have to find your own way of architecture. You have to define, it is not, the architect is not a single entity anymore. You have architects within clients. You have architects within the contractor. You have architects in a design firm within an engineer as well. So we spread out. So you are now, and that's an advantage. Pick your specialty and add it to a firm which is not mainly called an architect's firm. I think pure architects firms will die out quite soon. That is a topic German architects would love to kill me, but the development I see is there's more to an office than just architecture.
There are two more questions. I would like to collect them and ask them collectively. If there's another one, I would add one more and then we'll wrap up. So one here, one there, another one.
Hello. I have a question regarding the visualization and the connection between BIM and visualization and in architecture. Because I really think you made a point when you said that it's very important to make your client fall in love with the project. And you are experts at doing that because you go for emotions instead of only for images. And that's the value you add to the project. And my question is, can you imagine a scenario in the future in which your work is not done with a frozen image of the project, but with a moving image in which the, I want to say what I mean, could there be a simultaneous work between the visualization team and the design team or the construction team? Because we are always working with still images of the project, and the project is going on, and now the BIM model is going on, but the images are still frozen.
Yes, definitely. I think you have to divide the designing process or separate a bit the designing process from the marketing issues, because if you talk about the marketing to show this to the public or maybe to your client or a potential client, it's more about actually showing kind of a product, something that's for this moment finished that you want to show, and then you might continue the discussion afterwards. But within the design process, there is this many possibilities of using moving pictures and also stills in order to make the architecture better. And this is more where I personally see the chances for intelligent and connected programs like Revit or others, because this really can improve the design of it. And in this context, yes. In the marketing context, it's more about, okay, what do we have and how do we show this? And then it's more a frozen thing that's not so much within the design process where you have this.
Okay, I get your point, but I know a little bit how it works in your process, and it's a little bit like when doing competitions. You are working on a thing in parallel to the design process, and sometimes you need to say stop. The project is finished. We cannot change anything because we need to render this image like it is right now. My question is, could it be possible to somehow parameterize the different factors involved in rendering that image so that the design team can keep working more time up until the last moment when you render the image?
Let me embrace that question. One of the things that got me hooked on BIM was an idea that when you build a model, that model could be utilized in multiple different activities. It could be used for rendering and simulation. It could be used for manufacturing, for construction simulation. What really got me was that an investment in one direction, an investment in one area could yield so many value in so many different areas. That was fascinating. That the idea that I had to duplicate efforts for visualization, duplicate efforts for construction simulation, duplicate efforts for documentation was eroding, and that an investment in one model could yield results and values in multiple directions. This is starting to happen in a couple different ways. Cloud computing is helping quite a bit with this. For example, today you can work on a model and it can save to the cloud where it could be visualization could be performed in real time while the design team can continue to work. One of the things that BIM has been helping the construction and design industry is that they've been taking the word change, which used to be a very dirty word in architecture because change is very expensive and very difficult, and they've been taking the pain of change away from the design process so you can iterate. So the new opportunities that BIM is starting to yield for us is that while you're working in a model, when you have, as he was mentioning, an integrated environment, if the design team makes a change, somebody in the world of visualization would automatically have that model updated in real time, so the visualization represents the design intent at the 11th hour when you're at a time when you have to go and show the work. You're going to be able to merge those two worlds together. That's not only true for what's happening in visualization, that's also true for construction simulation, that's also true for documentation, for quantity takeoff. That's true in multiple areas, and the reason why it's true, if this is the case, is because the model lives in a database. In my perfect world, that database is in the cloud, and all these different technologies and all of these different contributors are connected to the same source of data. So once that data changes in one place, in this case the cloud, everyone collectively is brought forward to the latest information, and this is where BIM is sort of going.
To this, I'd just like to add one more thing. I think this is right. It's perfectly right. I think it's just today not always, not yet possible. Just because of the huge amount of data that especially BIM programs create, and due to the speed of internet and cloud exchanges. But as a future and probably very near future idea, yes, right now I would doubt it a bit, but
You're starting to see the first inklings of it.
One thing, how high is the percentage of high-end renderings in projects? If we look at the whole BIM project amount, I think honestly that on some projects we need this kind of imagery, but for a lot of clients, the SketchUp type, sorry for the adword, the kind of more, I name it Tim and Struppi is in English. What's that in English? Tim and Struppi, what's that in English? The Tintin stuff can be, yeah, quick and dirty, and as well sketchy. Sketchy can be beautiful. And what the nice things is, sketchy is deliverable by those packages if you are clever. And it gives the brain some freedom for imagination. So if you just do a quick and dirty white grayscale and you leave a little bit of the imagination to the client, it can be quite nice. If he wants to go further, then these guys are in. But in my projects, I would say like 75% is doable. When you're clever, a little bit programming in the background, you get beautiful, simplified 3D impressions.
And even more, this will
Yeah,
be even more.
yeah, yeah.
Thank you. Really interesting presentations, everyone. Building on this last comment then, in terms of renderings and visualizations, we're coming from Norway, and there the government-sponsored buildings, they require now BIM is a requirement in the competition phase. And I'm wondering if you've had any kinds of discussions of that here in Germany, or if you have some experience with that, and is it as heated as a discussion here, perhaps, as it is in Norway? So the link between, communicating the project in the ideation conceptual phase, and then the use of BIM in the, in this competition scenario.
Yeah, I think I answered that in the presentation. It is a shame, I must say. There are discussions, yes, but not there where the discussions should be. That means we need a top-down recommendation, a top-down standard we don't have, and we need someone who's brave enough to set that. And I don't know if a firm or of compound of firms in Germany is as strong. I doubt it. We need here, again, we need the politics. We need someone setting the pace, be brave enough to make mistakes. Again, the standard is well for competitions. They talk about that. But once they are not sitting down and saying, it's not happening, then everyone is doing something and you have no standard. The half of the win-win thing of what BIM is getting lost. So please, politics, chapters. Yeah, Germans are afraid. They always see problems. I'm German, but I know how that is. And I showed you the 18 participants discussing the topic. We have now Industriebauen 4.0, we have Building Smart, we have the Wirtschaftsministerium, we have VDI. They all work on that, but they don't get it done, as it's a top-down, means someone has to take responsibility for that. And it doesn't matter if it's perfect, but Germans want to be perfect, so it's going round and round and round. Yeah.
Let me say something. I'm not German, nor do I work in Germany. But I have lived through 10 years of BIM showing up on contractual agreements, and I've been at the forefront of the Building Smart Alliance at its inception and have lived through the entire process. All these standards that you talk about. When I see BIM, learn from my mistake. I know nobody likes to learn from people's mistake. Learn from ours, please. Don't repeat our mistakes. You don't need to. That's why I'm here. It's fantastic when BIM shows up on a contract, but BIM showing up on a contract is like saying you must buy a car. Everyone's going to use cars in this next project, and you're like, well, okay, great. I'm very happy that you want cars, but do you want Lamborghinis? Do you want Jeeps? Do these cars have to float on water and also drive on the land? Could they be slow? How about hybrids? Should they be electric cars? Could they be electric? How about an SUV? So when they say BIM, it's not enough to say BIM. You have to say something else. You need to define the BIM use case. If you don't define the BIM use case, then the whole BIM discussion goes wild, and it means different things to different people. People end up building models with more detail that they need to. Sometimes they don't put no detail at all. For example, I can answer this question from this way. You need to start from the end. Where do you want to land that BIM model? For example, I have a very big client who's an airport. What do they want from their BIM? They want to make sure that A, the model is live because they want to edit it in the future. There's many BIMs that are frozen, that cannot be edited. They want a live model. They want to own the model. They want to take ownership of the model. They want data about every piece and product going into the building. In other words, it can't just be the three-dimensional geometry. You could have a BIM model with no data about product manufacturer, specifications, performance. They want data in their model. But if the requirements for BIM do not technically spell that out, then the design team contractually has no obligation to put that data in the model, and I don't recommend goodwill as the strategy for putting in the data, hoping that the architect will say, you know what, it might be a good idea if I, put the specifications and the performance in the model. Never mind the fact that I put them on the paper by hand. I'm gonna start putting data in the model. Some do, some don't. Some put in too much information. Some don't care about the data and they just put in the geometry. You need to define what the BIM deliverable is and not just say BIM, but you need to define the BIM use case, and you need to think about it from what's appropriate for the designer and what's appropriate for the contractor, who's also going to be contributing to the BIM, adding models, refining that data. Ultimately, if they intend for that model to be used in operations, there's a very serious data collection effort that starts with the architect and it ends with the contractor, but it doesn't end there, because if the model is going to be used for operations and facilities management, then you have a requirement for a BIM that manages the as designed, as constructed, and as operational state of a model. And all of this needs to be into contractual language, or you will not get there.
That normally needs the whole beginning of your project. Sitting down, talking about and defining that, and everyone signs that. It is a signing which is in front of the law important.
Okay. Unfortunately, we have to finish. If you have comments or more questions or your own answers that you want to share with us, you can send me an email. You see it's gabriela.liebert@aia.org. AIA Europe, sorry, AIAEurope.org. And we can also answer. We're going to have some of these parts of this lecture and more detail of the slides and everything posted on our website. So you can also refer to that in a few weeks. So we want to really thank you tonight for attending, for staying with us, and we want to thank the speakers and the AIEDE Center for the venue. And have a great night and a great weekend. Okay?
Thank you.
And AIA is inviting us to a glass of wine, so if you have some more specific questions to the speakers, you can